Hawooky Self Watering Pot Review. G'day, folks. It's Greg here from Small Space Produce, and basically, we wanted to set up lots of herbs on the windowsill, and we were looking for some great pots that weren't too small but weren't too big, so they fit on the windowsill, but we could grow lots of our favourite herbs and just be able to grab fresh sprigs to add to our cooking straight away. And we wanted them to match. We wanted them to be white to go with our windowsill, and we'll show you how these look when they're all set up at the end of the video as well. So stick with us and you'll see how they go. But we also didn't want to break the bank, because I think a lot of these are overpriced at the end of the day. But when we were looking at various self-watering options to grow some herbs, these ones cropped up, and a 10 pack of these was around 42 bucks Australian dollars. So that's a pretty good price when you're talking sort of four odd dollars for each one of these, and the amount of herbs that we can grow. I mean, each time you grow herbs, you just harvest once and you've made your money back on each pot. So I consider pots like these an investment, to be honest. But also, as much as anything, it's about making the windowsill look absolutely amazing, and basically have our fresh herbs right there, ready to grab whenever we need them, and knowing they're not just sitting in the fridge and going off slowly. So, look, I thought, seeing as we've got them here and we're going to plant them out, we may as well do a review. And we have gone slightly different to some of the pots that we'd normally buy. So, let's break it down a little bit. Essentially, what we've got is the main compartment here. You're about 4 inches across the top, so it's a decent size. You'll be able to grow most things in here, and as we always do, we'll get ambitious and see what we can grow. And it's got sort of a bit of a wicking rope that you just pop through the two holes in there as well. And so that will essentially sit in the water container at the bottom here, and that will wick the water up into the soil for your plant to suck that all in. Now, herbs are an interesting one because we know some herbs will almost have a little bit more flavour or a little bit more sort of spice, I guess, if they are a little bit water strained. So if they're a little bit stressed from not having enough water. But look, to be honest, it's just never sat that well with me to go, right, let's purposefully stress out this plant and not give it enough water. I don't know, there's just something about that. You feel like you're not looking after them. But look, for us, that also means that they're more likely to go into their later stages, which is maybe bolt and go to seed or go to flower or whatever they might do, because they feel like they're at the end stage of their life. So I honestly believe in our history, using self-watering pots for herbs is fantastic because they just live for so much longer. And yes, some of them need a bit of management, like basil, just nipping the head off. And look, for some of them that might get really big, just managing the top growth a bit so they're not overdoing it. But essentially for us, if we want more herb flavour and we're worried that we've lost a little bit of flavour, we just simply add more herbs. And there's no expense going to the supermarket because it's growing right there on our windowsill. So look, our review of these, what I'm really intrigued by, look, I know the wicking sort of works, and it's got fairly small sized holes in there, so I'm pretty confident with the potting mix that we use. It's not really fine soil or anything like that, and you certainly want potting mix in here, not just standard soil. I don't think we're going to get a lot of sort of fall through into the water pot here. But what I'm quite intrigued in here is the water pot is see-through, and that's quite a unique thing for me. Obviously, a lot of self-watering pots and planters, they've got like a water indicator or something that shows you how much water is in there, but these ones don't, because you will see the water. That is your water indicator right there. But of course, if a bit of soil and stuff falls through there and lands in there, then it's going to look a bit messy and dirty, which is not a great look on your windowsill when you're going for part ornamental and part functional. But what's great about these is, of course, if the water gets dirty, you can just quietly pull that off, pour it out, fill it up with some fresh water, pop it back on there again, and suddenly you've got clean water just wicking away. So I don't think that's going to be an issue for us. And also, to fill them up, just to save mucking around too much, there is a nice little spot here where you can just have a nice little small watering can and just fill that up. And of course, whenever we plant plants in a self-watering pot or planter, the roots, when we first plant them, won't reach through to the bottom or near the bottom of the pot. So we will always water them from the top for probably 2 to 3 weeks, which is maybe a bit of overkill, but essentially 2 to 3 weeks. And then we'll just keep emptying this if it gets too full down the bottom. And at that point, we will stop watering from the top and we will only water from here. So as the reservoir empties, we can just fill it up. But of course, if you're going away for a week or two, just being able to fill that reservoir up and know that your beloved herbs are still being looked after is fantastic. So look, all in all, at first glance, I'm really happy with these. A 10 pack at $4 each is absolutely fantastic. They're really solidly built. Like, this doesn't come off that easily, so you've got to give it a little bit of oomph to get it off, which I think is a good thing because you don't want that falling off at any given time. They look quite nice. They're fairly sturdy. They're not too tacky. And again, nicely lined up. When we've got sort of 9 or 10 of them, we'll have to see how many fit on the windowsill. I think they'll look really nice with our white walls and our white windowsills and just some fresh herbs growing in them. So, of course, the next step for us is to go and put some soil in these bad boys and plant some herbs. And then I'll bring them up here and I will show you how they look. But so far, Hawooky, I'm pretty impressed with what you've got, and I'm excited to give these bad boys a try. So stick with us and we'll go plant some herbs and show you what it looks like and hopefully get you dreaming of what you might need on your windowsill. Now, folks, just while we're out there planting these little bad boys, of course, we would love you to give us a little subscribe and also set that alarm so you know when we've got new content. We love sharing this stuff with you. If we get it and we're going to use it, we want to show you whether it's worthwhile or not. And to be honest, the ones that we share, most of them are really great, and we want you to discover that as well. So give us a subscribe and keep up with our content at Small Space Produce. We'd really appreciate it. And of course, if you'd like to purchase these pots, I'll put a link in the description and also the comments. And yes, we get a very small commission from that too. Very small, I might add, but that does help us just a little bit to produce more content. So if you're considering some self-watering pots for herbs, then have a look in the description and give these a little look in. So here is our windowsill herb garden, and it has been absolutely sensational. So back to our review. I mean, look, these have been great. They've done everything we wanted grow-wise. As we were a little concerned, and as you can see here, certainly the reservoirs do get a little bit of dirt in the water, but some that we did a few weeks back that have really settled now, we're not having the same issues. It did take a little bit of work in terms of waiting till it was settled, then taking the bottoms off. We gave the bottom containers a little bit of a clean, and we just also rinsed the little wicking straws so they weren't dirty. And of course, now that the roots of those ones are reaching the bottom, we now don't water them from the top. We water through that little reservoir hole there, so those are nice and clean and clear. And so look, it's a tiny bit of extra work, but it's sort of worth it. In a way, you can see the water level, and I don't know, you almost feel more connected to what's going on. So it really hasn't bothered us much at all, particularly because you can see what is growing right here on the windowsill. So a quick run through of what we've got. Mint. We don't use this a lot, to be honest, but if we want to look really fancy and we have people over for dinner, just make a jug of water and put some mint leaves in there and you are suddenly the fanciest bloke in town. Greg's tips on how to look fancy. Pineapple sage. Again, we don't cook with this a lot. Occasionally on potatoes, it's the smell. It is just delicious. This is the most smelled plant in our entire house, and it's marvellous. Spring onions. These guys are on second round and growing quite nicely. Parsley. Not a big fan of parsley, but of course it's, again, it's all about looking fancy, isn't it? Bit of parsley on top. Coriander. I hate coriander with a passion. But the dear wife loves coriander with a passion. So there must be coriander in the best spot. Thyme, just a wonderful, wonderful one to grow. It grows so easily. And small pots, look at this thing. It's absolutely out of control. We'll have to trim him back fairly soon. Rosemary, we love rosemary. Just anytime we cook potatoes, chuck them in some alfoil, put them in the oven and make jacket potatoes or the air fryer, and they do a marvellous job. And the rosemary is doing really, really well in here. Quite surprised how well it's growing. Now the basil. Full disclaimer, sweet basil. This poor fella was live and thriving and got chopped down and eaten alive in his absolute prime. So these are some new seedlings we've grown because we love basil. We get through a heap of it. Got it growing in a lot of other places as well. Garlic chives, again, with the old spuds. Just chop a few of them up on top. Look fancy, taste delicious. And dill, we don't use it that often, but when we do, it's fantastic to have it fresh. So as you can see, my little herb garden there, it's doing really well. And of course, the one thing is that herbs, yeah, you don't need sunlight like you do tomatoes and some other things where really the more sunlight, the better. These guys do okay. And we only get about 8 hours of sunlight coming through this window a day, maybe 6 to 8 hours, depending on the weather, which is enough for herbs because we're not trying to absolutely crank them out. And while they need a little bit of management and chopping and things, the amount of people that have just commented on and just love our little fresh, almost like being at the store, just grab what you want fresh. And of course, keep in mind, herbs, when you look at the prices at the supermarket, often one of the more expensive ones to buy, and you just won't get them fresh like this. So that's our little herb garden. The Hawooky pots have been absolutely fantastic. I'd certainly highly recommend them, especially at that price. Only $4 or so for a pot is sensational, and 4 inches wide. You can grow most things in them, so they're super good, and we'll probably look to get a few more. So folks, thanks for joining us. This is Greg from Small Space Produce, and this has been a Hawooky Self Watering Pot review.